It was my birthday, a fancy party, and Julian, my CEO husband, made a toast, then BAM. He announced he'd slashed my $500,000 yearly pay for restructuring, winking at his young assistant Chloe. My stomach dropped, but I just smiled. Little did he know, I'd been quietly taking control of his million-dollar company for months. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. My name is Eleanor. For 20 years, I was Mrs. Julian Croft, the quiet wife behind the successful CEO. Julian built Croft Innovations, a big tech company, but I was there, from the garage days. I helped pick colors for the first office, proofread every pitch deck, even coded a little in the early years. My role evolved, or maybe it just shrunk. Julian always said I was his secret weapon, his muse. He set up a generous consulting fee for me a few years back, $500,000 a year, no questions asked. It was his way of acknowledging my past work, I guess, or maybe just keeping me comfortable and out of the way. I held a good chunk of shares too, inherited from my dad, who believed in Julian when no one else did. My dad made sure I was financially protected, a smart move, I'd come to learn. Julian, he was charming, still is in a way, but he got louder as the money piled up. More dinners out, later nights, fancy cars. I tried to keep our home a sanctuary, a calm place. I loved him, or I thought I did. We'd had good years, laughs, quiet evenings. But lately, those were just memories. He'd become a stranger, always on his phone, always just a little bit too busy for me. I'd noticed Chloe, his new executive assistant, just turned 28. She was bright, bubbly, always giggling at Julian's jokes. I saw her, but I told myself it was nothing. Just a young girl trying to make her way. Julian liked having young, energetic people around. That's what I told myself, every single time. My 45th birthday party was supposed to be a big deal. Julian rented out this gorgeous rooftop restaurant downtown. All our friends were there, the board members, important clients. I even saw Patrick and Sophia from the board, giving me warm smiles. I wore this elegant blue dress, felt pretty good actually. Julian, looking sharp in his suit, got up to make a toast. He held a champagne glass high. To my wonderful wife Eleanor, he boomed, his voice filling the room. Everyone clapped, smiled at me. I offered a shy wave, a genuine smile. She's been by my side through thick and thin, he continued, glancing at me, then his eyes flickered, just for a second, to Chloe, who stood by the bar, blushing a little. My stomach tightened. Just a bit. And as part of Croft Innovations' exciting new chapter, he went on, a little too quickly, we're making some strategic adjustments. My smile faltered. What was he doing? He cleared his throat. Effective next month, Eleanor's consulting agreement, which has served us well, will be streamlined. We're reallocating resources to our new head of strategic initiatives, Chloe, who will be instrumental in our future growth. He winked, a horrible, condescending wink, right at Chloe. My heart, it just stopped. The air left my lungs. Slashed my $500,000 pay. For her. My head swam. It was like a punch to the gut, in front of everyone. The whispers started immediately, hushed, but I heard them, you always do. My cheeks burned. Humiliation, hot and raw, washed over me. Julian, oblivious, was already clinking glasses with a grinning Chloe. I just stood there. My hand went to my chest, a small involuntary gesture. I wanted to scream, to cry, to just disappear. But I couldn't. Not here. Not now. I forced a smile, a shaky wobbly thing, and lifted my own glass. People awkwardly raised theirs, avoiding my gaze. It was the most brutal moment of my life, unfolding in slow motion, right there, at my own birthday party. I saw Patrick give Julian a disapproving look, and Sophia's eyes, full of pity, found mine. Pity. I hated pity. Later that night, the party a blur of forced smiles and choked back tears, I found myself in my study, the expensive blue dress still on. Julian was probably still out with Chloe, or at least, definitely not home. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands shaking. The humiliation, it hardened into something cold, sharp. This wasn't just about money, no. This was about respect. About dignity. About 20 years of my life, thrown away, dismissed, and replaced by a 28-year-old assistant. My mind started working, not racing, but focusing, like a laser. Julian had underestimated me, oh, he really had. I might have been quiet, but I wasn't stupid. My dad, bless his soul, wasn't just an investor, he was a corporate lawyer. He taught me about shares, about bylaws, about control. He taught me to always read the fine print, Eleanor, always. And he'd ensured my future, with those shares. A significant percentage. Not a majority, not yet, but a start. I sat at my desk, pulling up old documents on my laptop. The Croft Innovations shareholder agreements. The corporate bylaws. I remembered Julian joking years ago about how he scattered shares among key investors and family to avoid any one person having too much control, besides him, of course. He liked playing king. He liked being in charge. Well, Julian, I thought, my fingers flying across the keyboard, kings can be overthrown. This wasn't just revenge. This was about reclaiming what was mine, what I helped build, what he had so carelessly discarded. My quiet plan began, right there, in the silence of my study, fueled by the sting of his public betrayal. The hunt for every last share began. The next few weeks felt like living a double life. By day, I was the discarded wife, politely managing our household, occasionally bumping into Julian who would offer a vague, "Hope you're doing okay, Eleanor," before rushing off. By night, I was a corporate strategist, quietly untangling Julian's web. I pulled up my own financial records, secure accounts my dad had helped me set up years ago, separate from Julian's. Good. I had access to significant funds, more than enough for my plan. My first step was discreet research. I looked into every minor shareholder of Croft Innovations. Who were they? Were they still happy with Julian's leadership? Had he perhaps upset anyone lately with his abrupt decisions? I recalled Julian complaining about a few older investors who weren't keen on his bold, new directions. These were my targets. I also knew a few board members, like Patrick, had been with the company since the start. He was a traditionalist, valued stability, and saw Julian's increasing flamboyance as a risk. I started reaching out, not directly about shares at first, but just checking in. "Hello Patrick, it's Eleanor. Just calling to see how you are. I've been thinking about Croft Innovations a lot lately, wondering about its direction, you know." My voice was calm, almost innocent. Patrick sounded surprised to hear from me. He probably expected me to be a weeping mess. "Eleanor? I'm well, thank you. You know, things are dynamic over here." His pause, the careful wording, told me everything. He wasn't happy. Sophia, another board member, was sharp, always looking at the bottom line. Julian's recent personal indulgences, the private jets, the excessive parties, they wouldn't sit well with her. She valued solid returns, not flashy spending. I remembered a conversation she'd once had with me years ago, about fiscal responsibility. I filed that away. I started making my first moves, contacting the smaller shareholders. Some were family friends, people Julian had given a few shares to as a thank you. Others were early investors, now retirees, who were more interested in a consistent return than Julian's grand visions. "I'm interested in increasing my personal investment in the company," I'd say, "and I was wondering if you might be open to selling any of your shares?" Of course, at a premium. Many were. A few were hesitant, loyal to Julian. I didn't push. I just moved on. Each transfer, each new certificate quietly filed away in a secure safe deposit box, was a small victory. Julian, meanwhile, was too busy showing off Chloe at industry events, touting her innovative ideas. He'd make snide remarks about my sudden leisure time. "Enjoying your retirement, darling?" he'd say, a cruel smirk on his face. I'd just smile back, a secret warmth blossoming in my chest. He had no idea. Then came the midpoint reversal. Julian, seemingly feeling invincible, announced a new plan. He wanted to buy out a smaller competitor, a risky move that would require a significant capital injection and dilute existing shares. He called it aggressive expansion, but it felt like a desperate grab for more power, more headlines. He presented it to the board, confident they'd rubber stamp it. He called it a strategic maneuver that would solidify his control over Croft Innovations. He even hinted that some deadweight might be cut from the board if they didn't get on board. This was perfect. This was exactly what I needed. His overreach caused a stir among the board, especially Patrick and Sophia. It wasn't just about my personal vendetta anymore, it was about the company's future, its stability. The proposed buyout also required a special resolution, meaning a higher vote threshold. Julian, in his arrogance, thought he had it in the bag. He called a board meeting for a vote, expecting it to be a formality. "Just a quick vote, folks," he'd announced in an email. "No drama." He was so sure. I let him believe it. I even feigned disinterest when he mentioned the meeting. "Oh, more company business?" I'd say, my voice light. He'd just grunt, absorbed in his own importance. But his move, his arrogant power play, it pushed those last few hesitant shareholders right into my arms. They saw the danger, the risk. They saw Julian as a liability, not an asset. They wanted out, but they wanted to sell to someone they trusted. Someone who had the company's best interests at heart. That someone was me. I met Patrick for coffee, just a casual chat. "Julian's proposed acquisition, it feels rushed, doesn't it?" I asked, stirring my coffee. Patrick sighed. "It's a gamble, Eleanor. A big one. And honestly, his recent management style, it's concerning." I knew he meant Chloe, and the pay cut, and Julian's general arrogance. "The company's performance has been inconsistent," I murmured, "while his personal spending, not so much." Patrick just nodded. That conversation was pivotal. Patrick, a man who valued integrity, saw Julian slipping. He held a small but crucial block of shares, and he was the swing vote on the board for the special resolution. I didn't ask him directly for his shares then, not yet. But I planted the seed. Julian had tried to limit my influence, to cut me out, to solidify his control, but his own actions were creating the perfect storm for me to take it all. He was, unwittingly, handing me the keys to his kingdom. The crisis he thought he was averting, he was actually creating. Julian's unease started to become more obvious. He'd pace around the house, snapping at me over little things. "Have you seen that old shareholder report, Eleanor? The one with the Smith family's shares?" he'd bark. "No, darling, I haven't," I'd reply sweetly, my heart thumping a quiet rhythm of victory. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he knew something was shifting. The numbers weren't adding up quite right for his proposed acquisition. A few minor shareholders had mysteriously divested, and the shares hadn't appeared on the open market. He was baffled. He suspected I might be trying to cause trouble, perhaps divorce him for more money, but he never, not once, considered I was building an empire right under his nose. He was too consumed by his ego, his new affair, and his grand failing plans. He became more aggressive at home, trying to reassert his dominance. He'd bring Chloe to our house for work meetings, flaunting their closeness, giggling openly in the living room. I'd just offer them tea, a picture of domestic calm, observing everything. Every condescending look, every shared secret smile. It only solidified my resolve. My father's words echoed in my mind, "Never let them see you coming, Eleanor." Finally, the day came. The special board meeting Julian had called to vote on his acquisition, the one he was so confident about. The one where he expected to solidify his control and dismiss any dissenting voices. He'd even subtly threatened Patrick about his lack of alignment in a private email I, quite accidentally, saw on a shared computer. The night before, I held the final share certificates in my hand. They were real, tangible proof. With Patrick and Sophia's recent transfer of their smaller blocks, along with all my other discrete purchases, I now held more than 51% of Croft Innovations. The feeling wasn't exactly joy, it was a deep, quiet satisfaction. A justice. This was not just about the money he'd cut, or the humiliation. It was about reclaiming my worth, my contribution, my very self, from a man who had discarded it all so casually. The boardroom was buzzing. Julian, front and center, looked smug, confident. Chloe sat beside him, scribbling notes, looking important. Patrick looked tense. Sophia, calm but watchful. Julian began his presentation, a slick, self-congratulatory speech about his vision. He glossed over the risks, inflated the potential returns. He even made a subtle dig at outdated thinking and those resistant to change, clearly aimed at Patrick. I sat near the back, a silent observer. Julian finished, a flourish of his hands. "Any questions, remarks?" he asked, a challenge in his voice, not a genuine inquiry. Patrick cleared his throat. Julian, I still have concerns about the financial implications and the potential for over-leveraging. And the due diligence seems well rushed. Julian waved a dismissive hand. Patrick, we've been over this. It's a bold move for a bold company. Perhaps not bold enough, I said, my voice cutting through the tension, clear and calm. Everyone turned. Julian's eyes narrowed. Chloe stopped scribbling. Eleanor? What are you doing here? Julian asked, his voice sharp, surprised. This is a board meeting. Indeed it is, I replied, standing up slowly, deliberately. I walked to the head of the table, not to Julian, but to the center, where the projector cast its light. And as a majority shareholder, I believe I have a right to be here. Julian laughed, a brittle, harsh sound. A majority shareholder? Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor. You hold, what, 10%? Maybe 12. I reached into my handbag, pulling out a thick, legal-looking folder. My movements were precise. Actually, Julian, I said, my voice steady, I hold 51.3% of Croft Innovations. I laid out the share certificates, one by one, fanned them across the polished table. Each bore my name, legally transferred, notarized, signed. The room fell silent. Pin-drop quiet. Julian's face went from disbelief to utter horror. His jaw dropped. Chloe gasped, a small, choked sound. The board members, Patrick and Sophia included, stared, frozen in place, their eyes wide. Their mouths hung open, watching me. These are all legally acquired, verified and registered, I stated, my voice echoing slightly in the stunned silence. And as the majority shareholder, I am now exercising my right to call for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current CEO, Julian Croft. Effective immediately, I will be taking control of this company. Julian finally found his voice, a strangled, guttural sound. No. You can't. This is a trick. A fraud. He stood up, knocking his chair over. It's all here, Julian, I said, tapping the stack of documents. Every single purchase, every transfer. All perfectly legal. You were simply too preoccupied to notice. I met his gaze, no longer the quiet wife, but the CEO. The power had shifted. The tables had turned. Julian looked utterly defeated, his face ashen, his empire crumbling around him. Chloe, looking terrified, scurried out of the room. The board members, after the initial shock, started murmuring, then quickly regained their composure. Patrick was the first. Eleanor, if this is accurate, then legally, she's entirely within her rights. Sophia nodded, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. This is quite a development. But it seems irrefutable. Julian, sputtering protests, was eventually escorted out by security, a humiliating exit. He didn't even look at me. He just looked at his ruined kingdom. I watched him go, then turned back to the board, a deep breath filling my lungs. Gentlemen, madam, I said, my voice firm, we have a lot of work to do. Starting with reviewing all current initiatives, and re-establishing fiscal responsibility. Croft Innovations will move forward with integrity. I took Julian's old seat, the CEO's chair. It felt right. It felt like coming home. His smug smirk from just last week, thinking he could stop me. I just smiled then. Because I knew. I knew exactly what was coming. This wasn't just my revenge, it was my reclamation. It was about Eleanor. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or had to fight for what's truly yours, then you know this feeling. This moment, right here.